Hi everyone.
Were we?
Our community director Dave has asked us to do a little introductory to the video, so we must comply. Gavin here and Steve. So two of us have been in education for over, I suppose, 20 years at this stage. Steve is a principal of a school in Dublin. I'm teaching as well. I've also been involved in human behaviour for over 15 years, dealing with elite athletes, families, mothers, fathers, teenagers. Um, We've a lot of experience in this space. In our camps, we've over 3,000 children that have come through the our doors over the last 10 years. But anyway, on today's video, what we'd like to talk about is effectively the consequence of not applying this foundational law of human behavior of hierarchy of values. And also we want to touch on labeling and give you a fresh perspective on when we attach labels, when we label our children or ourselves or our teenagers. And finally, we'd like kind of have a little realization in terms of for ourselves, because if we can't integrate a realization on ourselves, it's kind of useless because we can't, if you can teach it, you can know it.
Just to pause you there, Gav, just on the first learning objective, that kind of stuff, there's a lot in that first one. So in order just to make sure that we're all kind of clear what that means, can we just simplify the first learning objective just a little bit more, if you don't mind, just to
No,
know.
absolutely. So effectively, the consequence of not applying this principle in your life in the development or expanding self-worth, self-belief, and self-confidence in ourselves, in our children and our teenagers. That's what we'd like to, that's kind of, I suppose, the main thing we'd like to get across here. And I suppose we've been talking about this earlier. 30, 40, 50 years ago, people didn't understand the consequences of smoking. They didn't understand the consequences of healthy eating. Now we understand the consequences of both, and behavior has drastically changed because there was an understanding of, oh my God, if I do this, this is what's actually happening inside my body. It's creating this effect. It's causing my body to do X, Y, and Z. But there is not the same understanding for what's going on in the mind at the moment.
Yeah, and in the brain and that kind of stuff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and I suppose one little story that kind of pops to mind just, and I know people have probably heard this, but like understanding can change everything. I don't know, we kind of spoken about this before.
Yeah.
Remember the old story? There's a father on a train and he's three kids and they're going absolutely bananas and they're disturbing everyone. And like there's people going like, why is this guy not getting control of his kids here? What is going on? And suddenly someone plucked up the courage and they were like, listen, man, what's going on here? Like, you got to sort. And he turned around and he said, yeah, I'm really sorry. Like, their mother has just died and they just don't know how to deal with it. And the guy was like, oh my God. But within that moment, the point of this is that understanding a situation can suddenly change your whole perception of it, which in turn can change how you feel about it, and then changes your actions, your decisions, your actions. So it can change everything.
Yeah,
And
changing your behavior, your behavior towards that. Exactly. That's exactly what it changes.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's understanding. So the power of understanding is absolutely massive and it can't be understated, and especially in terms of what we're going to be speaking about.
Yeah, exactly. And it is around that again, the feedback we've got from the community and the people that are kind of DMing us and stuff like that on our school community. They are putting in things that they want to be covered, confidence, things like that, and we're taking it on board and we're doing that. So please keep your heard in that community, as I was saying. So make sure that
Absolutely.
you're
So the first thing in this, right? So the principle we're talking about is living according to one's highest value. And again, like we said in our last video last time, it's so important at this stage people don't go, oh, I've heard of values before. Oh, I've done values in work before. I've done values in some course I did before. The values that we're speaking about are a completely different type of values. They come from the study. This particular study comes from the study of axiology, which is the study of value and worth, how humans value something or assign worth to it. Now, what does that even mean? So let's break this straight down. This is neurological. It's not just a theory. It's how we operate. So we'll get the heavy bit out of the way first, and you keep me honest here,
yeah,
Steve.
well, absolutely, yeah.
So if this is getting heavy, you'll pull me back. So let's just make this from a value in how we're speaking about it is not a social nicety. It's not an interest. It's not a preference. What it is, it's an organizing or an operating system of how your brain works, your child brain works, your teenager's brain works. And a value in this context emerges from a void. And a void is something that at the very beginning of your life, the way your brain works, anything that it perceived was missing, meaningfully missing in its life, it created a value in which it wanted to fulfill. The thing to fulfill it became important. So it was purely, it's directional. So the point we're trying to make here is that your brain is eminently directional. It has an inbuilt direction that it wants to pursue. And it's not just a nice of value. I value hard work. I value my fat. That's not how it works. Your voids create your values. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So a bit on that last bit, I think that does make sense. So you're saying that like the voids, your brain picks up that there's something missing, and you're saying that your thoughts kind of flood there, is it?
Yes. So let's take for example, let's use an example. And anyone who's listening to this, do this in your own life. Look at anything that you perceive as highly meaningful in your life right now. So I'll take my example, right? So human behavior is massively meaningful to me. The study, I've been studying on it since I've been reading about it, studying it since I was 19. Where did that come from? It came from a void of uncertainty or questioning, like, what am I? Who am I? I didn't feel comfortable in certain situations. Like, should I be like this? Should I be more like that? So this uncertainty or this void became meaningful to me because I felt it was very much missing.
Mm.
That created a value that it became meaning for me to fulfill.
Right.
And the key point here is that there is a hierarchy. The brain, everything is hierarchical in the body and the brain. So there is a hierarchy. We have a most meaningful value or priority, and that hierarchy comes down into lesser priorities. And we can all like literally just imagine life. Everyone right now can think that there's some things that are high priority in my life and some things that I really don't care about.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with our children. It's the same with our teenagers. And unless we understand our highest priority, our most important value, we can inject someone else's one. So I might go, well, I might look up to Stephen and go, Stephen, yeah, like Stephen is able to be so disciplined at sport. He trains like he's in the gym every day. Just like, why can't I do that? Like I'm lazy when it comes to that area. So we can start judging ourselves against other people. And we see this, you know, we as parents can judge our children and put our priorities onto them, and it creates a mismatch in
Yeah.
them. So from the very first point, what we're trying to get here is that this is an actual real, we have an operating system that runs our behavior.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
that needs to be completely and utterly digested. And every single human being has one. There's no human, and we have them from, if you look at a baby, sorry to interrupt, Steve, if you look at a baby, you give a baby like you give a baby a certain teddy bear or a certain toy or a certain thing, the baby will throw away that which it doesn't value, and he will take put close to which he does value. You
yeah.
can see that all the way up. Anything that we don't value goes out into our garage, moves away from us. Anything that we value we bring close to us.
Yeah.
And so it is a real operating system in which we work, which we operate in.
And just something you said there that's important because that it's important that people work to their own set of values and their own list of things that they would be motivated and naturally kind of resilient in, and not somebody else's. You said about not importing somebody else's values on say on your child, and I did this so you do this kind of thing. It's about discovery and it's about them finding their
Well,
meaningful.
yes, no, you're dead right. You're dead right, and it's the biggest trap, obviously, in terms of putting your values on someone else's. But let's pull it back a little bit here and look at the consequences. Let's look at the consequences of, first of all, understanding what your highest value is, and look at how you operate when you're rooted in that highest value.
Yeah.
And like again, this isn't meant to be like a lecture, so like we're meant to try and make this experiential. So like pull me back here and like let's see how it operates really in our own life. So when you're listening to this, just kind of go, and anything that I say that Steve says that you disagree with, don't believe anything we say unless it makes sense in your life. You can completely see it and root it in your own self. So let's look at, for example, when when you're engaged in something that is highest priority for you, that is very meaningful to you, and look at your child in this. They are spontaneously inspired to act. And let's put in contrast to that anything that they do that they see no meaningful in, and anything you do that you see no meaning in. We are hesitant, we procrastinate, and we frustrate. So it's fascinating to see that, people kind of feel that, oh, I have a lack of drive, or my son won't get up out of the bed, he's not inspired to do anything. But there's an area in his life that he is completely inspired to act. And there's an area in his life where he's so hesitant, he's frustrated doing, and he procrastinates. And then if you follow that on in terms of discipline, reliable, and focus, when you're doing something or your child is doing something, let's just say computer games that they highly value, that the computer games can be, people think that they're highly addictive, but it's also that the computer games give them a mission, give them something, especially, that young boys, sometimes they getting in or like they have their mates there. There's a mission. They're all doing something they see as meaningful, purposeful. They're saving some. In that state, they are disciplined, they're reliable, and they're focused. You pull them away from that and move it and get them to do something, let's say homework or other things, that doing jobs around the house, and that discipline fades away very quickly. I'm sure you see it in school, Steve,
Yeah,
like that the whole time. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. And again, it's about that intrinsic motivation. That's what they're getting the feedback from it. They're getting, um, I suppose, they're getting good feelings from it
Absolutely.
in an area where they
It's
don't know.
highly mean. Yeah, it's highly meaningful to them.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and within that space, when something is highly meaningful, we're operating from the prefrontal areas of our brain. And this is just so important for us to understand, because when we're operating from these areas where we're high performance,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And another thing, Steve, I know you'll come across this the whole time, is terms of, the talk about resilience in schools, and I want my kid to be more resilient, and
yeah.
they need to be more resilient. But this is like, we talk about labels, you
Yes.
know. The biggest label is that, like, if they're not resilient. No, they're not resilient in areas that is not meaningful to them and is
They
lower
don't
down
care
the
about it.
hierarchy of priorities.
Yeah. If they don't care about it, they're not going to be resilient about it. That's the kind of thing, isn't it? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's that. And on the labeling side of things, I know that we need to be careful with the labels because people can attach an identity to those labels, and be it positive or negative, which is important. And I know there's a story you might have heard of before that it's like the dangers of positive labeling. People saying that they took a group of students essentially, and one group they gave both groups the same test. One, when they did the test, they labeled them as smart. They said, "Well done, you're so smart. Well done, you're so smart. If you must have got
Yep.
5 out of 5 in that test." The other ones they labeled them as hardworking, and through a series of these tests being the same, and it just showed you the different perceptions. The ones that were hardworking wanted to continue because they felt that they wanted to work hard. The ones that were labeled as smart wanted to stop because they didn't want to jeopardize their smart label. So it was about the dangers that can be associated with labeling. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. And on that, let's just dive into that a little bit. In terms of smart and hardworking, right? And again, let's put this into our own selves. Okay, what does smart mean? Smart means that you have a keen intellect, sharp memory, you're creative, you stay with it for a long period of time. So like smart is just a big label of a jumble of a lot of actions.
yeah,
And so when we take that as well, everyone has those actions in the area of their highest value. And when you show children, when you show teenagers, when we selves kind of go, oh my God, in my highest value, let's just say let's just say, for example, I know my mom, let's just say, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She, and this was something that was highly meaningful to her. And I know at JFK's mom, there's a very famous story about JFK's mom. They found in her diary that one of her mission was that she wanted to raise world leaders. They actually found that she wanted to be the mother of world leaders. That's kind of how inspiring of it. That's what she wanted to do.
So,
Now, within that domain, the genius that operates around the functioning of a household, keep creating a harmonious environment. Like there's a fierce amount of intelligence
mm,
in order to create this order, this harmony in this area. And I think when people suddenly go, okay, hold on a second, I have this in this area. It's not creating. I don't have to add it to myself.
yeah,
It's there in the highest. And then in the other areas, my memory goes to, goes to
yeah.
pot. They always say that you have sorry, go on.
Because people would say that they're bad timekeepers or something like that, and then you put, say, the example of the stay-at-home mom who knows exactly when the school
Absolutely.
drop-off is, exactly when and they have all those things already, but they just
Absolutely.
see it in other guises that they don't have this trait, but they have it in the area that they care about.
And you mentioned earlier on what's happening is there, and this again, why understanding is so important. It's they see it in somebody else that they've put up on a pedestal, and they say, "Oh, that person is so X, Y, so good in that area,
Mm.
and why can't I be? I should value it because society values it or whatever." And they judge themselves again. They beat themselves up there because they're unconscious as to where their highest priorities or their highest value is, and they
Yeah,
don't see where they have the same things. So we talk about that ancient Greek aphorism: "Know thyself, be thyself, love thyself." But this is effectively the science to know yourself. And to mention at this point, there is a process that we bring people through of there's 13 questions on a course that we'll do that effectively brings people through to isolate what is their highest value. So they go, oh my God. Like as I mentioned on the last video, I had a top MMA fighter that I was working with, big tough guy, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have expected a few tears to come out in the thing, but we went through. So when he connected with why he was doing what he was doing, just the tears started coming down, and it was lovely to see. And it's a big heart open when someone connects with this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and he can see all of the high achievement traits in that specific sliver, and then all the stuff he judged himself for, kind of, I can see why I didn't do that there, there, and there because this is where I did, and this wasn't a high priority to me.
yeah,
It's a
and
really beautiful exercise.
yeah, understanding. It's
Understanding,
absolutely,
understanding.
yeah, and understanding. And I suppose as adults and parents, understanding our children as well is really important, and understanding that we don't want to make sure that they are not feeling that they're blaming themselves, because naturally they're going to be comparing themselves against other children, that kind of stuff, and they,
It's absolutely and this is the problem. Unless they're rooted in themselves from very early on with the process. And no, it's just like education. It's just the same as we educate in terms of healthy eating, the same as we educate in terms of the environment, and same as the way we educate in all these areas. We must educate in the most important place, the know thyself, so that one can be themselves, so that one can value oneself. Because when you know yourself, you can be yourself because you've no problem. You go, this is what I do. I love teaching. I love doing human behavior.
yeah,
And when you're doing it, you see there's worth in it. I feel I'm giving value and giving worth, whether people think I am or think I'm
yeah.
not. I feel I am. And so I have a high sense of self-worth when I'm involved in this stuff. Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
and
I
you're
feel that
comfortable linking yourself to that identity through your discovery, your understanding. And again, with myself, I'm very comfortable identifying as a principal. I know I want to be a principal for years, and that's what
absolutely,
I want to do. And I was able to get there. So I'm very comfortable in that space. And
absolutely.
motivated, driven, naturally resilient, all that kind of stuff within that.
Absolutely. Like we know each other a long time, and the amount of times, we've spoken about certain things, and you're like, oh man, I can't stop doing that, or I can't get myself to do this. And
Yeah,
but when you're in work, like there's not a problem
yeah,
under that. It may be frustrating, but you just keep going through it, you keep
yeah,
solving it. It's just disciplined focus. And
yeah,
it's not that, you know what I mean? It's not that you're a one type of person. In one area you're this, and in the other area you're that. And I
yeah,
think that understanding is allows us to shed so much of that kind of like that judgment that kids put on
yeah. It
themselves, that
helps, yeah.
labels. Yeah, and
That, isn't it? It's just one area where you're saying discipline, reliable, and focus, isn't it? And then
yeah.
there's the opposite on the other side.
So that, yeah, absolutely. So everything has its poles. So you will hesitate, you'll frustrate, and you'll procrastinate on the area that's on areas that are low on your value list. Again, we used this example before, like in work. Anyone who's watching this, look at yourselves in work. There will be for I can let me give you an example here. I used to be in law, and I remember being in the office, and I remember kind of going, there was areas of the day when I was doing something that I became highly engaged and highly inspired, and it was when I was dealing with clients and I was trying to help them to understand a certain piece of work so that they could kind of make a breakthrough. But effectively, I didn't know at the time, but effectively I was kind of teaching, I was helping, I was teaching to try and help through a break. But then when you got me into like some of the other stuff, because I'm dyslexic, the paperwork, the stuff, Jesus, I was like, you know, I was just a different entity altogether. In one area I turned on, the other area my brain turned off. I went into my prefrontal, I then went back into my amygdala. So it's just, again, the understanding of this is so powerful. And I hope we're kind of getting this across to people. The next step, Steve, in terms of what we were chatting about is, so we spoke about kind of like the being spontaneously inspired to act in the highest value and needing external motivation to act in the lowest value. You need to get them paid to do something. Or then we spoke about discipline, reliable, and focus. We spoke about hesitate, procrastinate, and frustrate. We spoke about resilient in your highest value and very unresilient in your lower values. But then we can move on to as well some of the traits you'll start to evolve in. So as we talk, what you'll start to see evolve in your child, in your teenager, in yourself, when you're living according to your highest value and your life is organized around your highest value consciously. We always talk about, again, we talk about labels, like take leadership. We try to encourage leadership, and some kids think, oh, they're followers or they're not a leader. But again, we spoke about this earlier. You're going to see leadership tendencies and behaviors arise when the child is engaged or the teenager is engaged in their highest value. What did we speak about beforehand there in terms of, our, I think it was my 6-year-old we were talking about,
Yeah.
you know,
They
he has a little got a
yeah.
console for crisps, a tiny little one of these little tiny little things. Don't judge me. But he's teaching me in it. He's going, Dada, look, can you do this? Have you tried this? Have you done it? So his leadership, wanting to teach, wanting to show, put him in another area that he doesn't value, and he becomes a completely follower at the moment, like dressing himself. He sees no value in dressing himself. He's a complete follower. He sees no value in it, and he just lets me do it. Do you
Mm.
get, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think, and you would see this in school, you'll see it with people you work with, in their highest value, they will want to teach, their leadership will come out. You see this in people in work. You'll want to teach and help people in areas that are, and then in other areas where you feel, I really don't know about this, you'll become a follower.
Yeah.
So you have both.
Yes.
And I think again we spoke about labels. It's really important to understand that we've both. And then obviously identity. Like, how important is it to have a solid identity in oneself
Yeah.
growing up, to root in a solid identity? Like it's like a shield that protects you from the hedonistic lifestyles of, the addictions and all this. And they say that, your identity revolves around your highest value.
Yeah.
So what
So
does
it's
that even
motivate.
mean?
Yeah.
That
Motivate.
Yeah, so like take for example yourself, from my, like, if someone asks, like, who are you? I'm a teacher, a human behaviorist. I work with elite athletes, I work with parents. That's who I am. That's my identity. That's who I am. I feel
Yeah.
certain in that. I have
Yeah.
a self-certainty in myself in that. If you look at, if you if it was in if I'm judged against, you'd say, some other profession or something like that. I don't want, that's not who I am. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to sit there. All that's not who I am.
Yeah.
So, when we root our children's in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
yeah, when we root our children, absolutely. So self-certainty, rooting them in their highest value, is that's who I am. I love, what, and that just gives them that huge certainty in themselves. So that's kind of their leadership and and huge self-certainty. And then the consequence, Steve, we said the consequence of not doing that
Yeah.
is a huge degree of not certain. And this is where you see the individuals getting, in groupthink, that, they suddenly, oh, my friends, this is the cool, so I'll do that,
Yeah.
because they don't have a strong identity. And that's where they get into all of the troubles that we see people getting into these days,
Yeah. I hear you. Makes actually does make a lot of sense.
you know. Um, and then finally, the again the consequences, and again, make sure this makes sense to yourself when listening. But the long-term consequence of living according to one's highest value, and organizing your life around your highest value, is that you have the ability to set long-term goals and visions and dreams for yourself. Because when you doing something that you love or that is highest in your value list, you are disciplined, reliable, and focused. So you have bigger time horizons. But when you're doing something that you really don't value, you're hesitate, procrastinate, and frustrate. So your time horizons shrink. You're going to go, how am I even going to, I can't even, a goal that you set you like tomorrow, you go, I don't even know if I'm going to do that.
Mm.
Whereas let's say if you're big into the gym and that's really high in your value to be, physically, you can set this big, I want to be this in 5, 6 years time. But if you hate the gym and you see no value in this and for whatever, going to the gym the next day,
Yeah,
do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, it makes yeah. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard you kind of talk about that before. But that actually makes a lot of sense. That you, yeah, and it's good that you're kind of setting realistic goals. But a lot of people mightn't, and if they're in an area that they don't care about, like you're saying, like they don't even know if they're going to go to the gym the next day. But then they're looking down the line, or somebody wants to deadlift 250 kilos or whatever it may be, down the line. Uh, that's an interesting one with the time horizons. Actually, I've never heard that before.
And you actually, what you said there about realistic goals, and especially around New Year's, and this is
Mhm.
where people beat themselves up. Like they say, when you set a goal that is not aligned with your highest value, forget about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I set a goal a couple of years ago. I wanted to learn the guitar. Maybe 15 years ago, I was like, I want to be able to learn the guitar. And I had was all excited and I was thinking, oh, it's be great. After 2 months, calluses on my hands, it just went away. It wasn't, when I looked at what my highest values were, wasn't even close,
Yeah.
you know? And so when you talk about setting realistic goals are ones that are aligned with your highest value. And it's so important when you're setting goals for yourself, be it in, for your children, for teenagers, anytime they set a goal that's someone else's goal,
Mm.
the probability of their achievement will reduce drastically
Oh,
if
massive.
there's a misalignment.
Yeah.
And
'Cause-
could I mention, sorry, Steve, could I mention one more thing on that? And stop me if we're going too
yeah.
into deep on this. And just whilst you mention realistic goals, if you want to increase the probability of expanding your self-confidence, your self-worth, and your self-trust, your self-confidence, your self-worth, and your self-belief. Those three words are kind of bandied around sometimes. But when we set realistic goals aligned with our highest values, the probability of achievement of those goes up because we're disciplined, reliable, and focused. And then self-confidence. Confidence means con and fidence. So con is with and fidence is trust. So the longer you spend doing something because you're disciplined, reliable, and focused, the more you trust yourself. So trust is a consequence of doing something for a period of time that's meaningful to you.
Mm.
So your self-confidence expands in that area. Your self-belief expands because the more you move forward in a direction and are resilient in that direction, the more tools you see you have that you didn't think you had before.
Yeah.
So your self-belief expands. And then finally, your self-worth expands because you perceive what you're doing is worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's like, I can see the reason why I'm doing this. It's a meaningful reason for me. And you see value in what you're doing. And when you do something that you perceive is valuable, you see worth in it. And so your self-worth goes up. And I think it's a really, really important thing to be able to kind of link those two things, goals, confidence, belief, and self-worth with highest value.
Mm.
Because you hear them bandied around the whole time
Yeah.
without any type of structure to kind of go, yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah. Just to conclude this, just so it's about so would you give us just a conclusion, kind of wrapping it all just in that? Because I know that was a very good explanation there at the end there with the goal setting and realistic goals. Actually, it does resonate with me. So, but just to finish up, it's the consequences of not living within.
Yeah. But so just if I could just get slide one last little one in there before I do it, and the last little one in before that consequence is literally as we were saying, the consequence of living according to one's highest value is a meaningful and purposeful life. A lot of that ties into what we said earlier because meaning and purpose are high priority, high value. That's what your brain is a is a highest priority seeking organ. So when you're doing something that's high in your highest in your priority, you feel meaning and fulfillment in that. So if you want to live a meaningful and fulfilling life, you must live it. It must be linked. Your life must be organized your highest value. So I think it's
Yeah.
the ultimate consequence. The ultimate consequence of not is living a hedonistic life where you're running from pain. So when you're doing something that you perceive with no meaning in, you drop into your amygdala here. And then your amygdala is responsible from, is this painful? And then pushing you away from it. I don't want to do it. It's like a dinosaur chasing you. It's right. It's your primitive mind running away from predators and running towards prey. So not to go too deep here, but the consequence of not living according to your highest value is that you're going to be living in fear. You're going to be living in survival. You're going to be living in anxiety. You're going to be avoiding things, seeking fantasies. The consequence of living in your highest values is that you operate more from your prefrontal areas and you're going to be experiencing more meaning, more fulfillment, more resilient, more achievement, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't mean no challenges. It means absolutely challenges, but it means that you're going to see those things as on the way and not in the way, as one of my mentors used to say.
Yeah.
Um, so to wrap it up, Steve, the consequences of not living according to one's of not understanding one's highest value and not living according to one's highest value is you increase the probability of living according to someone else's priorities,
Yeah.
which are not yours. And therefore, because they're not yours and you're shooting yourself that I should be, you're going to experience all of the anxieties, the frustrations, the hesitations, the labeling, the following, beating yourself up. Why can't I do this? Why can't I never do that? I'm not resilient, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And all of the mental health things that we see, midlife crisis, all of these things are a consequence of, a neurological consequence of not living in that prefrontal areas, that meaningful, not perceiving high meaning in life, and living in that survival areas of it. And that's again a conversation for another day. But I hope what we've done is, I hope what we've done is showing that just like we understand the consequences of eating McDonald's every day or smoking 40 cigarettes every day, it has a massive tangible effect on the body and the biology. And I hope what we've shown, what we're hoping to show and progressive to show is that by understanding what your highest priorities, that actual operating system, that that you neurologically, that you biologically, it has an effect on you, that you feel it. The body is giving you feedback of meaning and purpose, showing that you're in line with this. And the body is also giving you feedback. The brain is giving you feedback of anxieties, frustrations, all procrastinations when you're unaligned with that particular thing. So it's feedback that you're getting. Hope we've
Yeah.
shown that.